today I am bringing you a tutorial. This one is my fabric storage bag. Alright, it's quite a big bag. It is 17 by 11 inches wide, and it has got double zippers on the front, and it is a number 5 zipper, so it's a lot stronger than your dressmaking zips. It's got a vinyl here so you can see what's inside. This one's a glittery one. You can get the kits or the pattern from my website, alicestitchfingers.co.uk. As you can see on the inside, you can fit quite a lot in here. Now the dividers are optional, yeah, that's the word, so you don't have to put those in if you don't want to. I quite like them for a bag like this, so that I've got, you can see I've got jelly rolls at each end, and then I've got fat quarters in the centre. But I have done one where I've just put one of the dividers in, and basically I've got my full blocks on this side, and then my pattern pieces of fabric, patchwork pieces rather, on the side. It's also got a little pocket on the front here, a contents label where the handle is. So if you wanted to label them with whatever's inside and stack them up, because you could actually stack them all on top of each other, you can put what's on the inside there. So this is what it looks like, and I actually love it. I think it's a brilliant pattern, and it's quite easy to do as well. So let's get started. First of all, what I've done is I have fused all my pieces. Now the fusing is quite an important part of the bag, and it's one that you really need to take a bit of time and care with. I think I am going to do a tutorial just on how to do the fusing, because you do need to make sure it's done really well. As you can see, there's no bubbles or anything on there. So I like to fuse it from the back first, and I've just used an iron on this, although I do have a heat press. So I fuse it from the back first, and I do use steam, and then I turn it over and I fuse it from the top, just to make sure it's all done. So I've got all that finished. I've done the lining because it's going to be the same as the construction of the bag, and I'm now ready to do the little contents pocket for the front. So I've cut my binding, and basically I'm just going to chop off the selvage. I'm going to fold over just a little bit at the start, probably 1/4 inch, and then fold it wrong sides together. So all the edges are enclosed in there, and I don't press mine. I like it to be loose, so that I think you get a neater finish with it. So I'm going to start on the long part of the bottom there. I'm going to move the camera so you can see, but I'm just going to put this in first. So we're using a 1/4 inch seam allowance on this part of the construction of the bag. Now let's move the camera so you can see. I'll just see if I can get it round here. Put it down. Now the I'm using the Bernina 770 today, and it does have a really bright light, although saying that, this is on the lowest setting, so I have turned it down as far as possible, but I will show you in close-up every bit that's done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a stiletto on the edge of the vinyl, just so that I can tell where the edge is, and I'm going to stitch down to about 1/4 inch away, and then I'm going to pivot and sew off at that corner. So when I take that out, you can see I've stitched along the top there, and I've gone up to that corner at the edge there. So what we're going to do then is bring the binding up so it is in line with that row of stitches going off at the corner. I'm going to bring it back down level with the side here, and then you will have this little V here. That is your mitre. We're going to put that flat, and we're going to stitch down the side. We're going to do that on every corner going around, and that is what gives you a lovely mitered look to your... I'll turn my stitch length down a bit. So I'm on about a 220 or 2.2 depending on your machine. Stitch to the corner about 1/4 inch away again, stitch off at an angle. That beeping noise is just my iron, and I'm going to lift my fabric up so it's got that diagonal line there, bring it straight back down, and then repeat again, keeping all my edges level. And go off at an angle. Exactly the same again. So this is the contents label, and this is where you're going to cut a piece of card or paper saying what's in the bag. If you want to, you don't have to do it. Stitch off at the corner, and then when you get to where you started, we're just going to sew over it for about 1 centimetre or so. I'm going to cut it off and stitch over. So now you should have your piece looking something like this. And what we're going to do is fold all those edges back and turn them to the other side of the pocket there. So now what you need to do is, we're not going to iron it because we don't want to have a sticky vinyl mess on our iron. So basically we're just going to fold over these pieces to fold over the stitches there, and then top stitch in place. So I'm going to put my stitch length back up to about a 3, and I'm going to top stitch. I'm just going to snip off all those loose threads because they're annoying me. Use your stiletto as well, use it as an extra pair of hands, one that you don't mind getting close up to the needle. So when you get to the corners, we're just going to fold the fabric down and bring it back up so that forms that nice V at the edge there, and then pivot and turn. Gives you a lovely looking corner. Doing it this way, so we're going to do that all the way around. I like to get all the components done, and then it's just a case of constructing the bag. Oops, being attacked by a fly. So use the stiletto to make it hold it all in place. There we go. And I just want this to look as neat as possible where we started sewing. So I'm going to tuck all those edges in. If you find that the stiletto's not holding it, use whatever you can, a pokey tool, or this is one of those purple things that's not actually purple, it's blue. It's the same thing. Just to hold that in place. You want this to look as nice and neat as you can. It's a good way of practicing your binding actually, so if you're not very good at it, just cut some little squares and practice binding on those. That way you're not wasting any big pieces of fabric or any projects. And by the time you've done a few of those, I'm sure you'll have cracked it. There we go. So I just need to go 1 stitch back. That's it. And then finish where we started. And there we go, that is our little pocket all nicely done. So when you stitch this onto the front of the bag, if you stitch right on this edge along those 3 sides, leaving the top open, and that way you can slip something inside, that will give it a nice double stitched look. So I've just got a few threads on here that I want to trim off. I don't like loose threads. There we go. One more. I'm sure this flies on a mission to get me. Right, so I'll place that to the side. The next thing I want to do is the handle, and then we can get those stitched on. So this is cut to the size in the instructions, and when I open it up, you can see what I've done is I've folded it in half and pressed. I have put an inch piece of the stiff stabilizer. I don't know if I told you to do that in the pattern, but that's up to you. There's plenty enough left in the kit if you want to do that. I've folded the edges on top of that at both ends, so that's enclosing all the row edges, and then I've pressed the row edge over the top and done the same on the other side. So all that's left for me to do now is folding this edge, and I like to do that as I'm sewing to make sure I get it right on the edge here. So I'm going to stitch all the way around the handle to hold all that in place. So all the edges are held in place. Line up the corners, and we're going to start sewing. So I've got my stitch length raised to a 3, so that's fine. Stitch to the corner. So what I'm doing is I'm making sure the edges are level as I'm sewing, rather than pressing it first. This way, if it needs to move a little bit, I can do it. If you've pressed it, it tends to want to go where you've pressed it to. Just hold all that in place. By the way, this is the Chula Pink homemade fabric, so just to let you know, I am quite happy for you to make to sell afterwards when you've used the kit. So if you want to make more in your own fabrics, I'm very happy for you to do that. Stitch all the way around, loose threads again, my nemesis. Starting where you finished, and there we've got our handle. So I'm going to put them on first before we get into the construction, then I know it's all done. So one of the long parts, the 17 by 11s, are the front. So it's not directional, is it? It is actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm going to place my pocket in the centre. I'm placing it central as well, and I'm going to stitch around 3 sides. Put my stitch length down a little bit because this is actually construction. Back stitch at the beginning and the end. Gives a lovely look by doing the 2 rows of stitching. And back stitch at the end. Remember, don't sew over the top, otherwise you won't be able to put anything inside. So now we've got our handle. I'm going to place that over the pocket, and I want to stitch a 1 inch square or thereabouts at the side of the pocket in the middle. So just like that. I'll show you when I've done it. So I'm going to do a square first of all along the stitches that we've stitched before. It's probably more like 3/4 of an inch, this one. And then I'm going to stitch diagonally from corner to corner, and that's going to give it a lot of strength because the handle is going to hold all the weight of all your fabric that you put in the box. So if I show you that there, you can see we've done a round square and then diagonally on there. We're going to do the same on the other side, but I'm going to move it up so we've got the same distance here, and then what you raise up will form the pocket. Just keep it nice and straight. Follow the stitches already sewn. I'm loving this fabric. And then do the diagonal stitches as well. It's a lot easier to sew this now before you construct the bag. There we go. So now you've got the front of your bag, and that is going to form the handle. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stitch the sides to the front. So it is directional, so I just want to make sure the numbers are all the same size. It's going the same way. So I'm going to stitch with about 1 centimetre seam allowance. I'm going to turn my stitch length down because this is the construction of the bag. We don't want it to come undone. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and end. I'm going to sew the other side on the opposite side of the bag. Right, so now it comes to doing the back. Now the back, it does tell you in the instructions, you want to start sewing about 1 centimetre down. So I'm just going to put a little mark on here, 1 centimetre from the top, on both edges. You can just see that little dot there. I'm going to place it the right way. So I'm going to place the side on there and start sewing 1 centimetre down and back tack where you start and again where you finish. And repeat on the other side, centimetre down again. And back tack at the end. Right, so we've basically got our bag frame done. We need to stitch it to the base. Now I like to do mine, which is the front and back. That's the front, so that's the front there. I like to do mine by sewing it all flat. So what I like to do is, that's the back there, place it all the seams together so you can see that's the front. I'm going to line that up so it's level with that back there. So the seam starts centimetre in, and I'm going to start sewing here. I'm going to sew all the way across to the other end. So don't go over the stitches, just sew up to them. Hold your raw edges together and sew to the stitches on the opposite side. If you want to make it even neater, you can back tack when you get to those stitches, not going over them, and take it out. So we've sewn up to there, you can see the seams loose. So when you start sewing the side seam, you could actually pivot, put your needle down at the other side of that seam there, and sew down to the other corner, stopping at the stitches again. I actually sew over that seam, so I don't mind so much, but I'm going to start sewing where we stopped, which is there. Put my needle down, and then with the needle in, I'm just going to pull all the seams level at the side there. You can actually, oops, migrating, snip it if you need to, but I don't find you need to. Just sew over it. Sew to the next corner, So I'm going to stop with my needle in. I'm going to bring this side down, bring all the raw edges level on that edge. It is quite thick because we've got all that interfacing in, and then carry on down to the other corner and repeat again. So stop stitching at the seam, stop with your needle down, bring the seam round, lift up the sides to bring all the edges level. Just put your finger inside, yeah, that's it, to make it all nice and even, and then sew over that seam to where we started, well, on the opposite side of the seam to where we started. Back tack, and then take that out. So what you will have is, you will have all your seams sewn into the base, and it will look like this. So I'm going to keep that on the inside here, and I'm going to get my lining. Now I've done exactly the same with the lining, and I have left 1 centimetre seam at the back, so I know which is the back. So I'm going to put it inside the right one, the outside one, right sides together, line up all those seams there, so the back seams go together here. You can put clips on if you want, in fact I will do, just so you can see, but I have got to put the zip in between, so I'm just doing it so I can measure for the zip. So put those seams together. I'm going to put a clip at each corner. I'm using clips because I'm using vinyl, and I don't like to use pins because it will leave holes in your vinyl if you do it that way. So you can see we've got our bit inside, our lining inside. Now I need to get my zip, and I told you I was using my own fabrics for this. So this is a rainbow zip I got from Amazon, and I've got these beautiful sliders. This is going to be a bag that I take to my retreats and things, so that's why it's special. Right, so what I need to do is I need to measure along one side, along the back, and along the opposite side. So I'm going to start measuring. I'll see, you can see I've put a zip end cover on there. I'm going to do the same on the other end, so you will see how I do it. I'm going to start measuring about 1 centimetre away from this edge here. So just go right up to the corner, flatten the seams so you're not making it too big. Right to the other corner, again flatten that seam and go around, and then you need to cut it off about 1 centimetre shorter again. This zip is so beautiful. I don't waste any. Well, I'm saying I don't waste any. I've probably wasted about 1 centimetre there. So now what I'm going to do is put the zip end cover on this side. So I've cut it to the size that's in the instructions. Fold it in half. Place the raw edges, so we've got the fold at that side and the raw edges there, against the back of the zip, and we're going to sew across the zip. Now do it steady. It is only plastic, so it will do it, but just take it slowly. So all the way across. So you can see I've just sewn across the zip there. Now what you're going to do is bring the back up to the top and fold it over and top stitch along the edge there. And I find that is a really nice, neat way to cover the zips. Make them look lovely. Again, you're going over the zip teeth, so just do it steady. There we go. And you end up with it looking like that. So now what you need to do is just trim that level with the zip tape, and you have a beautiful rainbow zip with lovely ends on. Right, so now what we need to do is we need to put this into the bag. So we're going to start at the back. We're going to have the zip teeth, so the rainbow part, facing the right side of the fabric on the back piece. So I'm going to put a clip there, sorry, not a pin. So I'm just going to fold the lining to the inside to get it out of the way, because you can do this in one step or you can do it in two, and I'm going to do it in two because I believe, well, it is obviously going to give it extra strength. So I'm going to put the zip pulls to the middle, which, well, they're all there more or less anyway. So just fold that line into the inside. So if you're doing it in one step, what you would do is you would clip all this to the bag. You see it fits perfectly because we've measured it. And then you would bring up the lining and clip that on top, so you're sandwiching that zip between. So if you wanted to, you could do it all in one go. I'm going to do it in two because I believe that it's going to give you extra strength by sewing it once, then sewing the lining on. So you probably won't be able to see now because it's going to be tipped up, but I will show you when I've finished. So I'm going to take that foot off and I'm going to put my zipper foot on. I'm going to move my needle to the right position, and I'm going to stitch along this edge here in between the tape. You can just see a line there. So you've got your zip teeth in the middle, then you've got this line here just where the edge of the clip is, and that's where I'm going to stitch. So I'll try and do it so you can see. It's not the easiest thing to do when you're doing a video, but I'm going to back tack. Keep the edges all level. Sorry, I'm going to have to lift it up. You know you can't see. I'll try and tell you what I'm doing. So I'm just going along to where the seam is, so keep it all nice and level at the edges. Going over that first seam. Coming along the front now. I'm taking the clips out as I go. If you feel better moving the zip pulls out of the way, then stop with your needle in the fabric and move it past where you're stitching and then carry on. It does actually give you a nice neat finish, so it's worth doing. Coming up to the seam on the edge. Sorry, on the front seam. Stop with the needle down, and then we've just got the last side seam to do. This interfacing is quite stiff, but it's easy to sew through. It's not a problem at all to sew through it. And then we're going to back tack at the end. Right, so now you can see we've stitched the zip right side down all the way around to the back. So the back is left open. So now we're going to put the lining on top, lining up all those side seams, and we're going to stitch again all the way around. Keep all the edges level. Back tack again. So you're only sewing in straight lines, there's nothing difficult about it. It's just hard to manoeuvre it because of the thick interlining. But you need that to give it strength to hold all those fabrics. I think the other one I did, I just put a lighter interfacing in, and I think this is a lot nicer with the stiff one in. Right, so I've got to where the zip pulls are, so I'm going to raise my foot with my needle in the work and then carry on past. So I moved the pulls out of the way, sorry, while I was with my needle up. So now we've got 2 layers of stitching on top of that zip, which will hold it nicely. Back to the beginning. So the only bit we're not stitching is the back of the bag. I know it's not good viewing for you, but I am telling you what I'm doing, and I will show you now. I'll just come to the last part. Just make sure I back tap nice and strong. Right, so now you can see all the lining is enclosed with the zip sandwiched in between. So we've still got the back open, and that is where we're going to turn it all to the right side. So I'm going to poke those corners out, and it will resemble a bag then with no lid. So just put your fingers into the corners, or get, I like to use a chopstick or pokey tool, nothing too sharp. I wouldn't be using my scissors. Poke all those corners out. There we go. Another one. There we go. You won't have to do this again, so it's worth doing it nice and neat this time. Right, so that's all done. Now what I'm going to do is push the lining to the inside and pull the zip up. So it's probably worthwhile you top stitching this in place. So I will do that, and then I will show you what we have. I think I'll do it, no, I'll do it, yeah, well, I'll do it this, from the right side. So what I'm doing is pulling the back up here. So that is where we started stitching. That is the lining part of it. So that is going to form the back where the vinyl goes, and I'm going to top stitch around here to hold that zip in place. My needle to the opposite side of my zipper foot, leaving the zipper foot on, and I'm going to top stitch about 1/4 inch away, and this should hold it down. Now I can turn my stitch up a little bit, so I've got it on about 3.2. Just hold them all nice and flat. Pull it down as I go. As I said, the only difficult thing is wrestling with this interfacing, but you really do need it so stiff. It's getting quite warm. I've got a fan on, but I can hardly feel it. Now I have got dangly zip pulls in here. I know you can't see them, but so you can just. I'm making sure that I'm not going over them because they will not like the needle hitting them. Right, safely past those. There we go. I'm just pulling it all nice and taut. I know it looks like I'm having a fight with it, and I do feel like I'm having a fight with it, but I'm going to win. Last seam. There we go, coming up to the final part, and I'm going to back tack to hold it all in place. There we go. It is a little bit of a fight, but it is worth it. Right, so now I'm going to push all this down. Now, if you wanted to have your dividers in, you would have done that before we constructed it. I'm not having any in this. I basically want this to take to my retreat so I can just fill it with fabric. Right, so what we've got now is, as you can see, we've got the zip attached on here, and on the back we have the two pieces that are held together. So you could actually stitch those together if you wanted to. I'm not going to, but I am going to get my vinyl, and I'm going to clip the vinyl onto the back. So I'm going to overlap the vinyl here, because this is going to cause this is going to be a little bridge, so that's going to join onto the zip there. So I'm just going to, so I've got about a centimetre hanging over that edge, which is right because we turned a centimetre in. So I've got the same on this side. If you've got a vinyl foot for your machine, it's probably worth putting it on, although saying that we need to use a zipper foot, so maybe not. So I'm just clipping that in place, and you'll see what we're needing to do is we're going to stitch the vinyl to the back. Then when we get to the sides, we're going to follow it around and stitch it to the zip. So I'm going to start at this side here. I'm going to start at the back in the middle. Move my needle over again. Sorry, I need a drink. And then all we need to do is add the binding. So it's almost finished, and I know you can't see again, but all I'm doing is putting the zipper foot against the edge, and I've got quite a big stitch in actually, which is fine because I just want to make sure it's going to be in the right place, and then I can go over it with a smaller stitch length. So I'm coming up to the edge where it starts onto the zip, so I'm going to just take it right up to the edge. I'm going to stop with my needle down. I'm going to bring the vinyl around and put it onto the zip, and just hold it with my, you can trim off any excess vinyl, because basically it's a square at the moment, but we're going to make it into a curve. So just lift that up, that's it, that's better. So we're going to bridge the gap there, and now we're onto the zip. So we're just going to carry on all the way around, adding the vinyl to the zip. You might be better off if you're wanting to pin it all first, because the vinyl doesn't like to be stitched more than once. I'm coming up to the first corner, and I'll take it out to show you what I'm planning to do. So again, I'm not back tacking because I don't want to put too many holes in here. So what I've done is I've gone round from here, and I've took it around that corner onto the zip. So I will just trim that little bit of the zip off there and come into the first bit here. I've stitched the vinyl to the zip, and this is square. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start stitching, and as I pivot round, you will end up with this little bit here. You just trim that off. So I'll put it back under. In fact, I'll tell you what I'll do. I will clip it so I can make sure it's going to be the right size, which it will be. There we go. Again, this corner, we're going to round it off as we sew it. So I don't like to cut it off beforehand. I like to wait till we've got it all stitched in place and then just trim it off afterwards. So yeah, it's going to fit lovely. You can see, perfect. So I'm going to put that back under and then ease it around that corner, well, curve. We'll call it a curve. So you might not have done anything like this before. It is quite different, but once you've done it, you'll feel like you've achieved something. So as I'm going round, I'm just pivoting. So I'm leaving my needle in my work, pivoting the vinyl around so it stays level with the edge of the zip. Your zip might start curling, which is not a problem. You can always clip it afterwards if you need to. I feel like a contortionist. The things we do for our sewing projects. We're sewing all along the front now. Coming up to the curve again. Making sure those zip pulls are out of the way. We don't want to get our needle stuck on them. So as I get to the curve, I'm keeping the edge of the vinyl along with the edge of the zip, and I'm just curling it round, moving the work as I go, taking the clips out as I go. We're not using pins. There we go. Take the clip out. To the final curve. So again, this is where we find the bridge. So the take the clips out. The vinyl is going to form that bridge. So we get to the corner and then we bring the back of the project around and go from that zip onto the back of the project and then finish off. Back to where we started. And that will hold it in place, and then I'm going to put the stitch down for the vinyl. My foot's fell off. So as you can see now, we've got the vinyl attached. So this is the bit that you may find slightly tricky, but you're going to bring it around here, and then it's going to go from the back onto the zip. So that vinyl forms a little bridge there. And then you're going to go all the way around, as you can see, to the opposite side. Now all we need to do is trim. This is the little bit of vinyl here that we're telling you about. Going to trim that level on both sides, and then we are going to add the binding. So I've got the binding here. I'm going to fold over about 1 centimetre at the start. I'm going to put the wrong sides together. I'm going to start at the back, and I'm going to bring it from the back here and start sewing. Sorry, you can't see that. Start sewing along the top here. So I've still got my zipper foot on. I can see the stitches I've previously sewn, so I'm going to try and stitch over them. You can trim it all nice and level if you need to. Starting on the back. Now I've put my needle to the opposite side on this, but I've just realised I've got my zip to do, so I can't do it that way. So I'm going to take that out. What I was trying to do was stitch it this way, but I can't because my zipper foot needs to do it this way. So sorry about that. I will just take that off. That was unpicking, not. So what I will do is I will put it in this way. I can still see the stitches, so just get those threads off. I'm going to place it against the back here, and I'm going to stitch here. Actually, it's probably easier to do it this way. Oh, is that the way I need to do it? Because I've got my zip. Yes, I think. I'll just check this. I'm going that way. Onto the, no, I need my needle at the other side. That's it. So now I'm doing it as I was before. I was right the first time. Well, I was right, but I just had my zip in, my needle in the wrong place. Right. So I will sew that again. Row edges together. Don't worry if it's overlapping a little bit, because you can trim off the edges. Put my needle, stitch length, sorry, down a little bit. So now we're coming over to where we form that bridge with the vinyl. Just pull it all straight. You don't need to undo your zip, because the zip's on the outside. Usually it's on the inside, but this is done with binding rather than bagging it out. So we're just coming around where we form that little bridge, and then round to the zip. I'm going to love this bag, I can tell. So coming around the corner, I'm going to actually undo the zip, because I think it might be easier. I don't want to catch my zip pulls on the needle, so just lifted my foot, pulled it past, there we go. And now I can open it up, and it might be easier for you to see as well. Yes, will be. So I'm just following the needle round, sorry, the zip round. You still can't see, can you? I'll show you. Basically, we're stitching over the stitches we've sewn before, but it's a smaller stitch length. All along the front. Keep the edges together. I wonder if next time I put the camera at the other side, might be better for you. I think it just helps to hear how it's done, because it is slightly different to a lot of projects. But we've finished actually when we've done this binding, so it's not a long project. I wonder if they do a zipper foot that's Teflon. Coming up to the other side, so I'm just going to pull that zip closed so I can get past it without damaging the puller. Coming up to the other corner where we formed that bridge with the vinyl, and we're just going to sew over the top of that. And then onto the back. Over the stitches previously sewn, and then back to where we started. There we go. Overlap it by about 1 centimetre or so, take it out, trim off the excess binding, let's poke all the corners back out again. Get some shape back into the bag. Right, so we're going to zip it back up and you can see what we've got. Fold the binding to the top first so we don't catch it in the zip. We don't want to do that, do we? So fold the binding up, that's it. Zip the bag up. Right, so all that needs to be done now is the binding needs to be folded over the top, and I like to hand stitch it in place, and it's not a problem hand stitching through the vinyl. Just take it slowly and use a sharp needle. So we're going to stitch all that in place, and then we have our very posh bag. So that will look like that with the little dangly zips, and I really like this one. I'm really pleased with it. So there you go, that is how to do the fabric storage bag. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.